Just like how the new information on the new Wolfgang was spread across 6 different videos from over 3 months of changes and hotfixes, leading to Beard having to make a definitive, final rework video, mind you. All the teensy-tiny crafting tweaks are also spread across these 3 videos right here. And once again, that's not gonna do most people any good, especially if they've been avoiding the beta content waiting for the official release. There's at least one big bullet point to bring from the crafting menu changes here. Clay tossed in some really important stuff underneath the other changes category. There's definitely some things you should know in the prototyping and blueprint section. And finally, the items and recipe changes are also of note. In short, I'm doing for the recipes and crafting stuff as I did for Wolfgang the other day. One final definitive video on all the little crafting and miscellaneous changes, only this time I'm going unscripted, so hold on to your butts. This is gonna be a fast one. And first up, a change I'm really not seeing a lot of people talk about, and it's probably because it's been buried underneath everything else. But we can craft from inside chests now, everybody. We do not need the materials in our inventory anymore. And this is so good. Definitely quality of life. Refinements like wax paper, beeswax, and marble beans now require an alchemy engine, not a science machine. To continue though, some other really fun changes would be that turf stack size has doubled from 10 to 20. All characters can make marsh turf now. We no longer have to be near a terra firma tamper to actually make any of these turfs after we initially build them. And even cobblestones have had a major buff, everybody, as they no longer require any other turf to be made. We can make them with cutstone and flint immediately. That's so big, and I didn't notice it until just the other day. Oh, they also did the same for mud turf, but that is obviously not as big a change as flipping cobblestones, for Pete's sake. But before we move on, folks, they did kind of nerf turf a little bit. It now no longer gives as much fuel efficiency as it once did. In fact, not even close. We used to be able to just use a couple of these to really fuel fires. Now it takes a heck of a lot of turf. To continue on a very similar line, if we start talking about lures and floats with the tackle receptacle, the same deal applies. You build it once, you now no longer need to be near the prototyper to do it again. And while this change does stem from the fact that Clay wanted to give us more freedom in the crafting menus itself, it also is influenced by the fact that birds no longer drop those little advert things anymore. Heck, not even the Melbatross or the Moose Goose will. In fact, one of our big bad bluebird friends doesn't drop literally any blueprints anymore. Like, at all. Nope, not at all, folks. And I'm not entirely sure why still, but hey, whatever. The waterfowl can. If you kill her, you can make it. You want to make some feathery canvas, you can go ahead and do so. You head on over to this, you can go ahead and make a Melbatross quill immediately. You go to the think tank, you check on the seafaring tab, winged sail kit, right then and there. No blueprints whatsoever. Which I suppose bleeds into the next topic rather nicely. The boat patch and the oars can be made immediately, no matter what, but the boat kit is back to being a think tank recipe. Oh, but before we move on, speaking of boats and the Melbatross and all that, put 2 and 2 together and you get a Melbatross build that is now better than ever, with an absolutely insane amount of uses, because Clay wanted it to reflect a boss drop item. And while we're still on the topic of boats, everybody, we have got to mention cookie cutter shells, because nowadays they have a 50% chance to drop their cookie cutter shells themselves, which is a monstrous increase to what they previously dropped these things at. But remain on that boat, as they also increased how much logs and things like driftwood and even living logs will repair a boat now, which is, okay, a thing. We might as well note it. But apparently we cannot escape the water quite yet, because we need to talk about the Oasis Lake, everybody. A fashion goggles-less Oasis Lake, as we can now make them immediately without having to fish it up. And that also includes the potted succulent, everybody, but since they had to go make the potted succulent not be something you have to fish out and get a blueprint for, they also did the same with the potted fern. So if you have the materials in an alchemy engine, you can make both immediately now, and they also have reduced crafts. But hold up, Beard, what does that mean for the desert goggles? Can we make those immediately now? No. Those, we still kinda have to fish up and hope we get in crumble packages. And bloody heck, game, that was amazing. And as an even bigger bonus, they gave the desert goggles summer insulation. A pretty darn decent amount too. So take advantage. Carrying on, the Clean Sweeper is now just a straight up alchemy engine craft, costing mere twigs and petals, way cheaper than it used to be. And I'm still not entirely sure if totally normal trees will drop this thing, but it doesn't matter if they do, because it's now dirt, flippin' cheap. The Sea Wreath is too, having halved its craft from 12 kelp fronds to 6. But once again, as I said in this video, that really doesn't matter. Unless this thing gets a buff to how much it drains our sanity, there's no point in wearing it, because the Lunar Island is gonna counter it easily. All of Woody's kitschy idols no longer spoil everybody, which happens to be a pretty darn decent Woody buff of all things. As most of us know by now, late game Hound waves, and I do mean late game Hound waves, we're talking day 100 and beyond, we'll see the introduction of Varglets within them, everybody. Essentially, smaller Vargs with less damage, less health, and they can only spawn 3 hounds, that's it, but they can still be special hounds, unless that doesn't work. It's supposed to spawn 3 hounds. But that leads into our final topics of the day, all of which take place in the settings menus, everybody. We can now disable ice and fire hounds if we wish, and these are in waves, not just in general in the world, mind you. Literally every year of event, or just big time event in general, can now be turned on and activated and active at once, which is actually really fun. If you remember to do so in the world generation settings before you actually do generate a world, you can turn off roads. Seeing the cave worm thing reminds me, with both Hound waves and Depth Worm waves, not only will the first wave come a little later than usual, in later game waves, the frequency of those has also been increased a little bit, so they won't be coming as often as they usually do. Clicking on a world before we actually get to any of those world settings can help us duplicate a world, which is kind of neat. Another thing I really haven't seen people talk about, or convert it to a cloud save instead of a local one, so that Steam can remember it just in the event that we happen to lose it. And finally, because I only just remembered it again, the Deerclops change, everybody. I've mentioned it before, but I haven't shown it. Here it is in action. The guy only hits where he is looking. So we can literally kite this guy by going back and forth, which is something we were never able to do before. And again, as long as you're not right under this guy, he can't hit you. Let's see if I can get a good shot of that. Look at that. I mean, in previous iterations, he absolutely would have hit me right there. Oh, okay, yeah. Again, don't stand right under him, but you can still be pretty close. And that's really neat. And there you have, everyone. Just a very quick blitz through a ton of teensy-tiny changes that honestly could all add up to an update in and of themselves. Because believe it or not, even all of this wasn't exactly everything. I didn't go into how the seeded packet has been buffed, and how seeds will now last twice as long within it, just like an icebox, essentially. There's another change buried within that's not really that important, but could actually be situationally useful, in that the stage hand and shadow hands, things that come after your fires, no longer trigger spiders. I never really mentioned any of the tips and lores added to the loading screens because that seemed pretty self-explanatory, but again, that also came in this update. Clay even fixed a bug with Bearger to the point where they put it underneath the other changes category and not bug fixes, and what they did fix was indeed his spawning mechanics, so he should be regularly showing up now, and even a select few other things after that. But for the most part, what you saw here today were the big yet still tiny things. For a lot of you, this was just repetitive information, but for those who are now just experiencing the new content, I hope this helps. So thanks for watching, folks. Well wishes to all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.